Amy, thank you very much for the time. Help us understand exactly what Brian Flores is alleging and what you make of this class action complaint against the NFL, please.
Sure. Well, have you guys dug in at all to some of the allegations? Because there are many.
Yes.
There's a lot of very big ones.
Yes. We have been reading it on the air and during breaks. And so, yes, we have been talking about the texts by Bill Belichick and against Stephen Ross for throwing games and recruiting Deshaun Watson or who we believe to be Deshaun Watson and the Broncos. So, yes, we have been briefing our audience on some of the specifics.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot here. Keep in mind that some of the things that you've brought up that are very pertinent to Flores' specific situation really don't even encompass all the other people that could fall under the class, because this is being applied to be a class action lawsuit. So by virtue of that, it could include at least 20 people, potentially dozens of people who maybe have interviewed for not only head coach positions, but also, general manager positions, offensive coordinator positions. There's a whole host of roles that not only would fall under this lawsuit, but also would fall under the Rooney Rule, which was expanded to include, people who are considered to be minorities having a chance at not just interviewing for head coach, but all these other positions. So I think it's significant. I think the text messages certainly are important to Flores' case. I'm unsure if he has evidence to prove some of these other things that could maybe be he said, she said, like, the thing on the yacht or whatever. But the fact that they've listed multiple other head coaches who were Black, who were fired after winning seasons, in contrast to a lot of white coaches who had losing seasons and were given more opportunities to stay in their position, tells me that they're pretty confident that they're going to have the cooperation of a lot of people, and a lot of people means a lot of evidence. So I think, depending on what that evidence is, the NFL should be concerned about this lawsuit.
There's a lot of good stuff there. Let me try and get a couple of basics answered here. When they say jury demand at the end of this lawsuit, plaintiff and the proposed class hereby demand a trial by jury. Are they going to get that trial by jury? Because armed with all that data and all that context that you referenced, that perhaps is the goal more than anything, is forcing this kind of public hearing on the systemic racism being alleged.
They could. It just really depends. It depends on a lot of things. One is, do they get the class certified, which requires, a certain threshold of evidence. There are a lot of requirements that need to be met. There's a lot of people that have to participate, at least 20. And then that's, they have a lot of different claims here. So one of the claims would be governed by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That would be more of an administrative hearing, but they've brought claims under certain state statutes that prevent discrimination. So if they're able to move forward on those claims, then of course the NFL is going to fight this lawsuit and fight it from even, getting to the next stage, let alone getting before a jury. But if the stars align and they're able to prove that they have enough undisputed evidence, enough facts that require a jury to come and take a look and decide who's in the right and who's in the wrong, then it could get before a jury. But I think that's a ways off. I think usually these usually settle. It just depends how much the NFL wants to spend settling something like this, and that would depend on how many people participate.
So they would need 20. They would need a minimum of 20 people to step up and participate to get the trial by jury.
Well, to get it certified as a class action, there's actually no specific number, but generally, you would want probably 24 people or more.
And is Wigdor Law, is this law firm reputable and well known for these kind of lawsuits, to your knowledge, Amy?
I don't want to speculate on the reputation of a law firm, but what I will say is that Wigdor Law, they're based in New York. I'm based in New York. They do take on a lot of high-profile cases that get a lot of publicity, I'll say. I'll leave it at that.
They went. Just from my reading, they represented plaintiffs against Harvey Weinstein and Fox News. So just
Right.
I'll say it. We're talking to Amy Dash, Odyssey legal expert. The NFL has released a statement since you've been on. The NFL and our clubs are deeply committed to ensuring equitable employment practices and continue to make progress in providing equitable opportunities throughout our organizations. Diversity is core to everything we do, and there are few issues on which our clubs and our internal leadership team spend more time. We will defend against these claims, which are without merit. Amy,
Well, every lawsuit that's filed against the league, they come out with a statement that says that it has no merit, and they're vigorously going to defend against it. So,
right
at this point, the template's there, and they just sort of release it.
Just to be clear, that because the Rooney Rule is not law, but so Brian Flores is bringing this lawsuit because of hiring discrimination. Like federal law, correct? That's what he is suing here, that they're in violation of?
And state. Yeah, he's bringing it under multiple statutory rights of action. So, yeah, this at the state and federal level.
Okay. So,
but it's all, they're all, I wouldn't get too mixed up in that. That's all very technical. What I think people who are listening need to know is that all of the claims are based around this common theme of racial discrimination and hiring and retention and interviewing and things like that. And so basically, that's not allowed. There are civil rights acts in the law that prevent discrimination in hiring, whether it's based on race, color, sex, religion. Some of these apply to only, some of them apply to only like public positions that are in government. But what they're bringing it under is called Title VII. That's one of the laws that they're bringing a claim under, and that applies to private employers who have 15 or more employees.
Amy, in terms of as I've read this complaint now, but admittedly stop and go, there's a lot of data in it about the lack of minority coaches. There's a quote from Dr. King on the first page of it. They filed it on the first day of Black History Month. There's a story about the New York Giants. There's a story about the Denver Broncos. There's a story about the Miami Dolphins. It feels like it goes in a ton of different directions. Mm-hmm. Is that a legal strategy, or what do you make of that complaint? Is that a normal way for one of these complaints to look?
Well, the class action suit is against the NFL and all of the teams in the league. I mean, this is a suit that's brought by Brian Flores, right? But make no mistake that the strategy here is that ultimately, when more people start to buy into this class action suit, it's really going to be, Black, maybe Hispanic. It's going to be minority applicants versus the NFL and all of the teams under that umbrella. Because, there weren't just allegations that Black coaches weren't given fair opportunities, weren't actually considered even when they were interviewed, that it was sort of all a sham, just to pay lip service to, we're doing the right thing or we're for social justice and racial equality. But they were also saying, that they're accusing the NFL of having systemic racism in its ranks, not only in the sense of hiring, but its entire model. I mean, they even describe how, according to them, you've got almost all of the owners are white. They're sitting in their luxury boxes, and they're raking in millions and millions of dollars while they have 70% of their players who are Black, banging each other's heads in and getting brain damage. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes time to give relief and a form of restitution to these people who have so badly damaged their bodies and are experiencing, brain damage and the after effects of that. Well, all of a sudden, then you have the race norming controversy, and you have the league admitting that there were practices in determining who gets health care benefits based on whether they're Black or white, and allegations that the league was saying that Black players had inferior cognitive abilities than white players, so therefore they wouldn't qualify, even if their brain damage was in some cases worse than a white player's brain damage. So it's really an attack on the NFL, which the lawsuit calls, a plantation operation.
Mm-hmm.
It's that bold, and it's that bold in its language.
We appreciate that you've read it in full and have that kind of context because, there's that whole other angle of the race norming from the concussion payouts and this allegation of the plantation. It's, the parallel. There are NFL experts, well-sourced, already tweeting that they've spoken to other coaches who, quote, have the receipts to join this in terms of class action and becoming there. What if you were representing somebody who's done this and this becomes a class action suit? What overall is the goal here? Because is the goal a settlement? But to Danny's point about it spraying to all these fields at once, it feels like the goal might be trying to get the NFL to reckon with this reality and all these different facets and deal with it in some legislative specific ways.
So the goal is obviously to get, I think it's to get a settlement and to get, monetary compensation for lost income and lost opportunities and the pain and suffering of discrimination, right? But one of the other primary goals, and it's stated in the suit, is injunctive relief. And injunctive relief is that the court basically forces the league to put certain things into practice, to change the way that they operate. Even I'll go as far as to say the court could require the league to hire Brian Flores or hire a certain number of qualified individuals. So it's a righting of the perceived wrong. And specifically, just I'll name a couple of the things that they're seeking, but there are many, many. One is that Black individuals are involved in hiring decisions. They want there to be a committee to source Black investors and owners to own teams. They want hiring to be more objective with actual criteria that applicants would be measured against. And then they also want funds to train players who are interested in post-career roles in management so that they have a fair shot at getting those, as well as a full explanation of why people are hired and why people aren't hired after the hiring decisions are made. So this is, Brian Flores and whoever joins him trying to create accountability for the NFL and really sort of put like a legal police force on the NFL to say, here are the things that you have to do. And guess what? If you don't do them, we're going to take you back to court and make you do them. So you're now going to be held accountable and sort of under the jurisdiction of the court and their orders.
Two more things from me with Odyssey legal insider Amy Dash. Very much appreciate your time. The NFL has immediately said these claims are without merit. Like you said, that's boilerplate, but it's within hours of the lawsuit coming out, so they clearly haven't done any investigation into the lawsuit. Do Bill Belichick's text message that is front and center, page 1 of the document, in your legal opinion, automatically give this lawsuit merit?
I think those are important because of the timing. I don't know exactly the chronology, but the way that the legal complaint lays it out, he notifies Flores that the Giants have made a decision, yet the process continues, and Flores is forced to go meet with the GM and go through an interview, knowing that he's not going to get that job. They've already settled on somebody. So it shows the internal workings and the hypocrisy of what's going on internally versus the procedures that they're employing externally. And so that would help to prove that, okay, like the Rooney Rule actually is operating in a sham-like fashion because these interviews aren't serious interviews. They're not actually considering Flores. Now, whether they're not considering him because he's Black versus because maybe they fell in love with another coach, that's also something that they would have to prove. They can't just prove that, okay, he had to go through this interview and they already had their candidate, but they did it anyway. That's not enough. They would have to show exactly what they're alleging, and that is that he was not taken seriously because of his race.
How do you think this plays out?
I think it settles. I definitely think it settles, but I think there's going to be a lot of court procedures. So typically what the NFL will do is they'll take their hired guns and they'll try to get it dismissed in the early stages. They'll try to see if it even makes class certification, if it even meets that criteria. They're not going to dole out a lot of money until they really feel like their back's up against the wall, like with the St. Louis Rams relocation.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously they were playing a role with that behind the scenes and making sure that got settled, I believe. So I think that's sort of been the pattern. Same with the concussion settlement. There's going to be a lot of litigation, and then we're just going to have to wait and see until they've had enough, how far the case can get. If they get it dismissed, they don't have to pay.
I wonder if there'll be pressure among some of the class action filers to get the injunctive stuff, the legislative stuff into the league before they settle, or as part of the settlement. Is that possible?
Probably part of the settlement. Yeah, absolutely.
Amy Dash.
I think that's a big theme here.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for making time for us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.